Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, Prince Automation Destination. This is Prince. I hope you are doing well. So today we are going to continue our discussion with record class, which is a special class introduced in JDK 17 to store immutable data. And we can say that this is substitute of POJO class, provided you want to store the immutable data, meaning once the data is stored, we cannot modify it. If you have such requirement, so in those cases, you can replace POJO with record class because it is quite simple as compared to POJO classes, right? So now let us jump onto the discussion. So as part of today's discussion, what we are going to cover is we are going to map the JSON, or we are going to convert the JSON into record type of class, right? And this technique is known as deserialization. And this is one of the most widely asked interview question as well, like how to deserialize a JSON response into POJO class generally. But as part of today's discussion, we are going to convert JSON into record because record is also one type of class, right? So in case you want to understand more on record, you can check out my video, which I have already covered. I'll be sharing the link of same in icon, right? Also, what we covered in the last lecture, that record can be used in data provider, because in `𝑇𝒠𝑡𝑁𝐺, when we create the test case and we want to run that particular test case with multiple data set, then we use data provider, and that data is also going to be static. So in such case, we can use record class. So in case you want to understand at low level, you can check out the same in icon, right? So now let us talk about what we are going to cover and what is going to be the key learnings, right? So at the end of this particular session, you will learn how to use JSON in `𝑇𝒠𝑁𝐺 for reading the data. People generally use Excel sheet through POI API, but what we are going to use is we are going to use JSON, and that is what will be passing to data provider, right? As JSON cannot be directly consumed into data provider, so what we'll be doing is we'll be deserializing this particular JSON into the record class, right? So we will soon understand. Also, data provider have two type of return types. People are generally aware on 2D array, but it has iterator also has a return type. So we'll be covering both the approaches, right? So now let us come to the demonstration, right? So let me close everything first, right? And let me start from the starting. So this is a Maven based project where I'm having multiple dependencies: Selenium, `𝑇𝒠𝑁𝐺, Selenium for UI automation, `𝑇𝒠𝑁𝐺 for running the test cases. And this dependency is the additional dependency that I have added to convert the JSON into record. Generally, it is used to convert the JSON into POJO classes. So same can be used for converting the JSON into record class, right? Now let us come to this particular test case that we discussed previously, right? So this is a test case, right, where we are having a before method where we are doing the initialization. If I'll talk about the initialization, so what we are doing is we are using the concept of singleton design pattern. So if you would notice, this is a class that we have created, driver manager, which has private constructor where we have static method to get the instance of this particular method only once, and then we have a set driver method where we are setting the driver. In our case, it is going to be Chrome, right? So we are setting it using the thread local concept for the thread safety purpose. Then we are using a get driver to get the same driver, right? So we are using the concept of thread local to provide like each driver a separate driver, right? Each thread a separate driver, right? So in case you want to understand more on this, I have already covered a video. You can check out the same in icon, right? Now coming back, right? So this particular section is for the initialization, right? So before method meaning it will execute before every test method, right? Talking about this particular test section, right? So this is the test case, which is about logging into the application, right? So in before method, first of all, we have set the driver, meaning we have initialized the driver. And this is similar to web driver equal to new Chrome driver, but we have abstracted it to the next layer, right? To the separate layer, right? Here we are getting the driver and we are launching this particular application, right? So after execution of this particular section, source demo app will be launched, right? And now the control will come to this particular test case, right? And here we are after launching the application, we are providing the username and password, and we are clicking on login, meaning we are logging into the application. So if you would notice, we are getting the user from this particular user. What is this user? So this user is nothing but a record, right? So if you take a look at this particular record, so it is quite simple as compared to class. We don't need to write constructor. We don't need to create any method for this particular username and password to get the username and password. We don't need to create other methods, right? So it is quite simple, right? So if you would notice like how this particular user is coming. So this user is coming from the data provider. So this is what we have covered in the previous lecture, right? You can check out more in depth in the previous video, which I'll be showing in icon, right? So if you would notice, like generally like we pass the hard-coded value, but here what we have done is we have enclosed this into user object, right? That object of record, okay? Now what we are going to do next, right? We are going to move this particular section into JSON class, JSON file, right? And then we are going to convert that JSON into like a record, and then we are going to use that particular record in this particular data provider, right? So if I, for example, come to this particular slide, what we are going to talk about. So first of all, we'll be converting, we'll be creating a user.json. We'll be keeping all the user credentials. Then we'll be mapping this particular users.json into user record, where we'll be using the concept of deserialization using object mapper, which is most widely asked interview question, right? Once we have converted this into user record, then we are going to pass it to data provider, and from data provider, we'll be passing it to test case. So this is how it will look like at high level, right? So now let us do the same, right? So for this purpose, what I'm going to do, first of all, let us create a package, right? And let us give it name record deserialize. Okay. And let us copy both the classes, right? Okay, because we are going to use this, right? And let us forget about this, okay? And close this one as well, okay? And let us rename this particular class as well, and let us give it name source demo deserialize. Okay. And now what is the first thing, right? So let me close these files as well, and let us open this, right? So what is the first thing? First of all, we need to create a JSON file, right? So I'll be creating it under resources, because this is a resource, right? So right click, new, and file, and let us give it name users.json, right? And what is this data? So if you would notice, this is like a JSON object. This is username and this is password, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to simply provide username, right? Let us keep this username field as blank for now, and then this is password, right? Okay. Make sure this username and password should match with this particular record, right? Whatever we have created, right? Meaning this username, meaning text should match with this particular username, right? So if you notice, there is a change. So let me put it here, right? Only then this particular deserialization will work. If they won't match, it will have trouble, right? Similarly for password, we will keep it like this, right? Now let us come back to this particular class. So if you would notice, this was not a single user credentials. This is like a list, right? So how to create a list in case of JSON? So what we will do is we will simply enclose this into JSON array, right? So how do we do that? We simply do a square bracket, right? So let us go inside this, right? And let us copy this section once again. As we have 3 credentials, so I have copied 3 times, right? Now what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to copy standard user, right? And going to put it here. And similarly, the next user is problem user, right? And let us put it here. And the third user is logged out user, right? And let us put it here, right? And the password for all 3 is common. So let us copy it and provide it here, right? So first step is done, meaning we have created the JSON, right? Next thing is we are going to create a utility which will convert this JSON into record, right? Or map the JSON into response record, right? So for that purpose, what I have done is I have created a utility package, right? And here I'm going to create a class, and let us give it name JSON utility. Okay. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a method public static, right? And what it is supposed to return? It is supposed to return the list of users, right? User 1, user 2, user 3 in the form of list, right? So let us give the return type as list of user, right? Make sure that you're using this particular user, right? Record deserialize, because we have created a separate package, right? And let us import list as well, right? So we are going to use java.util, right? Next thing is like get users from JSON, right? Okay, so what we'll be doing is, first of all, we need this particular file, right? Which is an input, right? So I'll simply copy path, right? Copy it from content root, and here I'm going to write file equal to new file, right? And here we'll provide it, right? Next thing is we need to convert this JSON into users, right? So for that purpose, what I'll be doing is I'll be using object mapper, right? Which comes from JSON library. I'll be creating the object of object mapper. So this is the deserialization technique. New object mapper. Okay. And now what we are going to do? We are going to do read value, because we are going to read the value from this particular file, right? So it has many methods. As of now, I'll be using this particular file source and type reference. So I'll tell you like why I'm going to use type reference, right? Read value. And here first thing is we are going to provide this particular file, which is input. And then as this is list of users, right? As this is list of user that we need, right? So we are going to use type reference. So with type reference, what we can do is we can directly convert this into list of user or map of string comma integer or map of string comma user, right? So in case we have such requirement where we just directly want to convert a JSON response or JSON string into directly a list or map, then we can use the concept of type reference. So new type reference, right? And here we need to provide what we are looking for, right? So what is the reference that we need to provide? So it is like generic. So what we need list of user, right? Okay. So list of user. Okay. Meaning similar to this particular return type. Okay. And let us provide the colon, right? And let us return it as well. Okay. But it is giving some error. What is this error? This is the exception. Let us add it into the method signature, right? So two things are done. We have created the JSON. Now we have created the method to convert the JSON into this particular list of user, right? Now let us go to this particular class and let us replace this particular section, right? So first, let us discuss about because if you remember that data provider can return two type of output. One thing is it can return 2D array and second one is iterator. Let us first discuss about the iterator approach, right? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm simply going to copy this and comment this particular section for now. And let us replace this particular object like 2D array with iterator. Iterator of type what? User. You will soon understand why I'm using user, right? So I will replace this particular section, right? So now what we are going to do, JSON utility dot get users from JSON. What it will give? It will give list of user. Now simply we can call iterator, which will give list of user, right? Let us return the same. Okay. Now let us add this particular exception. Okay. So it will return it, right? Because we are using this particular method. So exception will propagate here as well. So we have added it here as well, right? So now we have passed it. So you see there is no issue, meaning data provider can return iterator as well, right? So if I, for example, replace it with string, it may give some error, right? So you see, if I hover over here, that data provider must return either an array or iterator, meaning it can return array or iterator. Okay. So we are using iterator. So let us execute this particular test case now. Okay. It should work fine, right? And if you would notice that we are using parallel equal to true. So all three test case, meaning the test case with all three data will run in parallel. So you see, all three are running in parallel. So you see, first instance got launched, second will also run in parallel, and third will also run in parallel. I have used synchronized keyword. That's why like it is taking some time to launch all three instances, but all three will be running in parallel, right? And why this parallel execution is working fine? Because we have used the concept of thread safety using thread local, right? So let us come back to IntelliJ. All three test cases will be executed, right? So this is first approach where we have used return type of data provider as iterator, right? Let us comment this section and let us come to this particular 2D array return type, right? And here also let us remove everything, right? And let us use this particular same method, JSON utility, right? JSON utility get users from JSON. As we are going to return 2D array, so we will have to convert this response somehow into 2D array. So first of all, what we'll be doing is we'll be using stream, and using stream, then we'll be mapping each user into the object, right? A single object, right? New object of type user, right? Okay, as I'm using GitHub Copilot, that's why it is suggesting, right? So we don't need this. What we need is we need 2D array. So for that purpose, I am going to use 2 array, right? And here also what we need 2-dimensional array. So new, or we can do object, right? Object, double square bracket, and colon new, right? So this is like a constructor reference in Java 8. So I'm using the concept of Java 8. You can do the same using normal or traditional for loop as well, right? So this is giving exception. Let us add it into method signature. So you see that we are able to convert this into 2D array, right? So let us return this, right? Because this is what is expected from this particular test case, right? Let us run this particular test case once again and see whether it will work fine. So you see all three are running in parallel, meaning they will work fine, right? Otherwise, it would have given the issue initially itself. So first instance is launched. Now soon the second will also launch in parallel, and third will also launch in parallel. So if you would notice, first, second, and third, right? And all are getting logged in, right? This one is still launching, right? Here also the credentials will come, right? And it will work fine, right? So you see all are executed, right? Let us wait for this to complete. So all are executed, right? So this is what I wanted to cover. So let us quickly recap what we covered. First of all, we moved the hard-coded credentials into JSON 5. Then we wrote the utility to convert this JSON into record with the help of object mapper, that is known as deserialization, which is most widely asked interview question. Then we discussed about two type of return type, iterator and 2D array. So this is what I wanted to cover, guys, as part of current discussion. Thank you for watching. I would request you to please like, share, and subscribe. And in the next session, we are going to talk about how to deserialize the JSON response of a particular API request using rest assured. So